as I alluded to, I'm a firm believer that the only thing that you can be sure about your plan is that it won't go totally as you plan it. Hold on to that with both hands as you go forward. I came up with that one myself.
That's true.
Isn't it? But that doesn't mean don't have a plan. You got to have a plan. So, as part of our plan, some of you have already have relationships with ministries. Some of you may be exploring that, or you may have ministries that their requirements don't match your abilities of your church to meet right now. You need to have 10 people. I'm not saying it's a bad ministry, but where do we go? Where do we look? One of the things that you should consider, some of the things, actually, will you tell me, if you're looking for a project, what should you be thinking about up front? What factors? Cost?
Location.
Sorry? Location.
I think it should be something that you have a passion for, something that you're interested in.
Okay.
Time frame, because like you said, that one place, do you really want to go there in January? The rush, I think.
Not if you're outside.
But no, I mean, that's
But-
I mean, you don't go to Mexico in the middle of summer because we're not used to that kind of temperature.
Absolutely.
Capabilities or capacities of both your church, but also where you're going.
Right. So what skills, abilities, attitudes you have or your group has and what are needed.
Well, that,
Or-
and like you can't take a 20-person team to a place that only has room to house 5 or 10.
Right. Right. I was just sharing with Mary my quick trip to Sierra Leone was to explore, could we do something? It didn't make sense for us to go to that community. Our community was so far out, there was no place to stay. The church, as it is, was a multi-use building that didn't belong to the church. They had worship on Sunday. On Monday, Sunday after church, it was all torn down. Monday, it was set up for a school. And the best thing we could do for our partner at that point was financial support. So finding out what the capacities are on both ends. What else?
Safety.
Especially this day and age, huh?
I felt totally safe going to Mexico, after much fear though. But when I was there, I absolutely felt totally safe.
And as team leaders, this is going to be something that you need to be very comfortable with. I mean, it's not a formal part of my slides, but it's very important. Your team members, I'm a believer in the spiritual warfare on teams. I had a lady that I took to Kenya. I'm just saying, Satan planned it in her head. Something bad was going to happen, and it was going to happen to her, and every doubt came. You got to be ready. You got to be confident in where you're going. Yes, things can still happen, but do your research. Be willing to do research. One of the issues she was afraid. She had chronic back issues, and so she had some pain pills that she was to carry with her. Somebody told her those drugs were not allowed in the United Arab Emirates, and you would be thrown in jail. I had to do the legwork. Technically, if I went through customs, they were not allowed there. But because we never left the airport, we were never technically in the country, so it wasn't an issue. But safety issues, do your legwork. Let's see what the list says. Are we doing good deeds? American Red Cross is a great organization. Great organization. It's not a mission organization.
I like what Marcia said during the break. I heard her say it's about building relationships.
Absolutely. And we're going to, when I talk a little bit further, when we talk about our partner ministries, these are the kinds of things we need to be looking at. What are your interests? How many people? Hey, you guys are on a roll. Hey, you're knocking it out of the park. That's a valid one too. And again, not necessarily out of the country. We've got a lot of opportunities for service right here in the States, but do you want to help muck out houses in Hershey from the flooding, or do you want to go to Texas? I don't think there's a wrong answer. You just need to know what. Now, someone's brought up cost. Now, I'm going to venture out and put this way, my opinion, caveat, my opinion. Cost is a factor, but don't let cost limit you. Our God is a faithful God. I have never found anyone who said, I want to go and serve, came forth with a servant's heart and a willingness to raise money or tell the story, that did not come up with the money to go. Case in point, after I told you my first trip, I came back so moved. I went to my wife, I said, you and the kids have got to do this. And she just looked at me. I was self-employed at the time, had an insulation business. And she said, 5 of us to Costa Rica. Where's this gonna come from? And in one of my better, more faithful moments, I looked at her and said, I don't know. But if you're willing to go, God will provide. And she's like, I'll go. I don't know where you're gonna come up with. The next week, I got a call from a man in Houston, Texas, building a house in Altoona. Wanted an estimate. We did sprayed foam insulation, very expensive. Okay, I do the estimate. $25,000 just to insulate. I emailed it back to him and thought, well, I'll never hear from him again. Within a day, he calls me and says, okay, you got it. I won't be ready for 6 months, but you got the job. I'm like, okay. My terms are, I ask for 50% down a week before the install, because that's when I buy the materials, and they have a shelf life that I can't get stuck with. He said, can't I just pay you now? All of it? I said, I mean, I was like, the week before is good. I'd just rather take care of it. I thought, somebody's pulling my leg. 2 days later, my wife came in the door. I'm sitting there like this. I gave her a bit of attitude. Going. She's like, what's that? I said, yeah, $25,000. Yeah, that's God. I don't care what you say, that's God. Because I'm a contractor, I don't pay another contractor. He never got a reference, anything. That's God. So think about it, but don't let it limit you. Something else that we didn't talk about, but you should talk about. Are you willing to be a link in the chain? Many of the ministries that we go out and work with, you're never going to see the end of the project. Maybe the project is unending. But if you're going down to do flood recovery in North Carolina, you may only see the drywall go on. Some groups, I see some groups, they want to make it their own. And I can be conflicted on that. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that can be, I want control of your ministry. So, but something to think about.
That is so crucial. I think that is absolutely, I mean, we are seed planters. We might get there to plant the seed and another team will get to see it flourish and another team will get to see the tree actually arise. You know, we've gotta, that's a God thing though, but that's how he works with us. He plants that seed and then 40, 50 years later, there goes you.
Right. And again, sometimes there's things like a local ministry. It may be yours. it's also an opportunity to invite other people into your ministry. But you can take a different role.
Some things you can't even, I mean, you, time-wise, you wouldn't be able to finish. Like, there's certain things, like if you're building like a house, the foundation has to be set for a certain amount of time before you can build on it and stuff. So unless you're gonna be there for 2 months or something like that.
Absolutely. But I have seen folks who have a hard time with that. So it's something to think about. One of the things I always like to do when I have the opportunity is go and visit the ministry before I take a team. It's not always feasible, but as a team leader, you're going to get a lot of questions.
When you say that, you go, for instance, you go to Costa Rica, check out the spot, and come back and give a report?
Well, a lot of what I've done is, especially in this role, I've tried to go to places that we're not actively serving. So there's nobody for me to draw on. And when I'm taking somebody totally out of their element, the more I can do to make them comfortable ahead of time. My poor wife, case in point, went to India. She's a trooper. She's a tough lady, smart lady. She likes her regular toilet. Especially for the bedroom area where you're sleeping. She can deal with just about anything. She wanted to know, and I'm not sure if you're all aware, some places even there that have flushed toilet, we call them squatty potties. It's like just a hole, but it's still flushed. But you really have to have good thighs. That was important. And when I could show her, yes, you only have to deal with that on the road. But where we're staying in the orphanage, they have Western toilets, facilities. Calmness returned. But it's what, sometimes it's preparing our folks and ourselves. I like, when I have those, I take pictures of where we're gonna sleep. All of that stuff takes away some of that fear and anxiety. And again, it could be right here in the States. If you're a country boy like me, and I'm going to inner city Washington, D.C., I want to know what I'm going to expect, because that's not my comfort zone. I don't know what to expect. So
We have stuff like that just in Harrisburg. You'd be surprised. Like, what part of Harrisburg are you going to? What, the part where we're going to serve in, okay? Oh, well, where's that at? The hood. And then I give a depiction of what that is. Poverty. Yes, there's trash on the ground. I know you're not used to that.
My pastor, Win Green, and his wife and 3 children spent 2 weeks in Mozambique at a Pembe orphanage, and they had no electricity at dark, none. Mm-hmm. And their latrine was just dug in the earth. I mean, it was just, and that was their bathroom facilities, and their food was consisted of beans and rice the entire time.
I like beans and rice.
So they were rather surprised at some of it.
And you always have folks who go with, not a whole lot phases me anymore. But as a team leader, I need to realize not everybody is there. Some of the folks, just to go down to a flood zone is gonna really stress them. We need to be sensitive to that and do what we can. And that's just one area, like I say, that I've found over the years. I evaluate many of the ministries here. Now with electronics, you can get them to send you pictures of the bunkhouse or whatever. But I was blessed, like I said, when I was going to develop new relationships, I was taking pictures of the sleeping accommodations, but it was more than that in that journey. I was talking about our partnership. What can I do? What do you need? Do you need us? Sometimes they don't. I was blessed, our bishop is also the bishop for Mongolia. And he invited me to go along to their annual meeting to explore taking teams there. It didn't make sense. I was there for a week with them until they got comfortable enough to tell me we're overwhelmed. sometimes these discussions don't mean we're going. Sometimes it's a better part of it to stay home and support them in another way.
What about youth on a mission trip? Do you have particular recommendations for youth mission trips?
Yeah, I do. But again, this is part of, if you're a leader,
Yes.
you may adopt my view or you may choose your own.
Right.
First of all, with anything, we're going to follow safe sanctuary policies.
Right.
But also, as servants, our ministry partners are the first ones we ask. Do you allow it? Flood recovery was one place that Superstorm Sandy hit Jersey, New York. We couldn't take teenagers below 16 or 18. They just weren't allowed.
Okay.
Other places, Henderson, you can take really young if you call ahead. They do family mission.
Oh, well.
So,
Kentucky.
Kentucky, close to Redbird, but it takes a long time to get there. It's down in the valleys, but the first is we ask that question of our host, and then you decide your own comfort level. I will not take someone under 18 without a guardian. That's just me. Youth traditionally haven't been my skill set. And I also have had young people even with their parents in other cultures act up.
Yes.
And it drilled even more into my head. I can't lead the team and be a parent.
Right.
That's my approach. That's not VIM law
Right.
by any means.
Right.
But as a team leader, you get to decide that.
Okay.
And don't let anybody bully you one way or the other. That being said, youth teams can be wonderful.
Yes.
I mean, I've taken my own children, and I think it's one of the best things I did as a parent, to be honest with you. All of them have gone on to be in mission independent at one point or another, and it's some of the best memories we have.
Wow.
And my 18-year-old, when he went to Bloomsburg University, he got in the Christian group there. I'm a graduate of Bloom.
I got to.
He said, "Dad, some of these kids never been on a mission trip. I think we need to take them to Costa Rica."
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I looked at my wife, like
Yeah, no.
15 to teenagers, and all I could think of, I'll be honest, all I could think of is me in college. And my wife, in her wisdom, looked at me and said, "Your son wants to serve God. Can you say no?"
That.
I was like, all right. And it was one of the best teams I ever had, because these young people, we prepared them, and they were prepared in a way that I wasn't at 18, 19, 20 years. They sat at night, and they got out their Bibles and debated Scripture on their own. And it's such a blessing. So set your rules with what you're comfortable with.
It probably also depends on where you're going too. I know that I was in the 9th Ward after Katrina, the day that it opened to anyone besides the National Guard. And they were still pulling bodies out of buildings and still marking on the doors how many they had found.
Right.
And you want to talk about an emotional and spiritual weight on someone if you're not prepared for that.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely. Yeah, and
and it's not that it was not safe or something, but
Right.
like
Right.
there's just that around you and.
Yep.
And where you go may have their set rules.
Right, that's the first one, your host, you ask. Because, again, they are the boss
Right.
over us as team leaders. Then, team leaders, you set your rules within the big guidelines of safety. Anything else? Okay. How can we find local projects?
At our church,
Yeah.
they're usually leaving voicemails for me. Seems like everybody wants us to be a part of their project.
How's that?
Okay.
Answer the phone.
It's true in many of our communities. Sometimes it's right in our block, sometimes it's a block over. But there are some other things to look at. Again, maybe we're not standing alone. Maybe there are other ministries to be a part of. So, yeah, take the walk around. For the next 11 days, call me. We have a jurisdictional website. I don't think I have that on that paper. We'll take a look at it. But a lot of times, conferences surrounding us will share needs. Sometimes within our congregation, we have folks who are parts of ministries we're not even aware of. Just asking them, putting that out. Teachers are a good resource that sometimes people don't think about, because they're there seeing our children in the schools. They come across all kinds of coming from different backgrounds and different issues. And for myself, my son, who's now a teacher in Mifflin County, shares with me things that he never saw growing up. Now he sees as a teacher the problems, and we were the stereotypical middle-class family. We were intact. And, just the single parent issues and so on that he's seen, I was clueless about. I mean, I know people get divorced, I'm not judging, but I didn't. So teachers, Red Cross, our service clubs, United Way can give you some good insight if you need. One of the things I also throw out is, even if you have an idea, talk to these folks, because somebody else might be doing it. I've seen some groups get really invested. We are going to address this need in our community. And you didn't do the research to find out somebody's already in that ministry. And maybe the best way is to partner with them. Food for thought.
You also probably pay attention to the news. I know, like, if a tornado just went through your area and tore up 30 houses, then that's 30 people that may need help.
Right. A very popular ministry are accessibility kind of projects, ramps. This was a mobility kind of thing that they took on, and their ministry was really supporting another ministry, but they did construction of.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
That's kind of cute.
I just like that. I don't know what
That's really cool.
Very cool.
Flood recoveries in your areas. One of the things that I'm really, I encourage you to think about, with us all living close to rivers, it's a great opportunity for you as a church to have a standing team ready, organized to respond when people have basements flood or so on. It's something you can get and have on standby. Because I tell you what, it's a time you can really, really show the love of Christ. When somebody who doesn't owe me anything, doesn't know me, is here to come alongside me in my time of crisis. Think about it.
How do you get connected to the organizations that would let you in those doors?
This kind of flooding kind of thing,
Yeah, would love to
emergency management agency.
do I call Red Cross, or do I call it?
The emergency management department or agency, I think it's county or municipality based. Everybody has an emergency management personnel. If I'm not sure of everyone's structure, but if you called a courthouse or someone like that.
Because that's what they do, the volunteer firefighters and stuff.
Yeah. Where's our volunteer
I work
fire?
for the township too, so yeah, each municipality has an EMA,
There you go.
and if you would call your borough, township, whatever you're in.
What's EMA?
Emergency management agency.
Agency, yeah.
Agency.
And they say EMC, Emergency Management Coordinator.
Firefighter.
I'm pumping up. Huh?
Because, I mean,
Is there training?
pardon?
There's very low
Oh,
paid
okay.
position, and they would be the ones to try to get federal funding and stuff. If, we got shut down once because us being near the river, we couldn't get in or out. We couldn't get to Harrisburg anyway, and then they would come in and try to get water and stuff into here or whatever, food and whatnot. I don't know the exact details, but if the train comes through, if heaven forbid the train derailed and there's chemicals, they would step in and try to open up shelters for people to get them out of town and stuff like that.
And there is, again, in talking with them, they have some idea of what is already in place. So you can better target your efforts rather than getting something together
Also
that.
get on that list of.
Right.
Where we are able to handle this for you, so if it happens, give us a call.
Right, and that can be a very complex thing. If you start doing things like, I'm gonna be a shelter, those are big commitments, and depending on the facility, can be quite a commitment of funds as well, just to be prepared. But providing labor and what we would call mucking out, that kind of stuff, isn't quite as in-depth. From time to time, you will also see in newsletters ERT training done by the conference. That's designed to be early response training for disasters. I'll be honest, not often we get called out, but it's not a bad day to if you have folks interested in that kind of response. Bill Toner, who's right down the road here in Lingelstown, is our trainer, and he's always glad to come out. Now, another resource, sometimes as we're looking for things, is our missional board website. Again, that is on that paper, but I just like to show you a little bit. Sometimes you can get ideas. Come.
Did they keep the word new in there all the way up until now?
Pardon me?
Did they keep the word new in there all the way up until now?
Probably. No, that's my PowerPoint. Now I gotta get it.
He doesn't want you to think he ate.
Come on. There we go. So what I've done in the past when I was looking for ideas, now moving beyond local ideas, is I'll go here on this page and see where people are going already. And it's another good way for you to explore opportunities, and it also gives you a name. I encourage you, if you're thinking about going to work in flood response in Tarboro, you can call Joy Shields or email her and say, hey, what's the system like? Is it working well? What can you use? You get more background and more information by resourcing out our other leaders. Also on here is forms. Because I am a kind of person who, even after I had team leader training, I could never find this disc with all the forms on it. So when it gets lost in the drawer, in the junk drawer in the kitchen, just come here. Team leaders, anything you need is there. It's kind of hard to read, but, and I'm going to show you some other forms, but know that they're there. You can download evaluations, applications, waivers. Also know that they're right here. You can't read it. It says Dorothy Earl Scholarship. So this is sort of an add-on. It's an application for first-time missioners. So you can qualify for, I think it's $100 in-country, $250 out-of-country if it's your first time. So that form is there. So as you're getting new group together, if they haven't been out on mission, there's an opportunity to get some funding.
Let me just ask this question again, even though we've talked about it.
Okay.
But, if we're doing a church mission trip, and we're basically saying, well, this one church is going to fill the spots, but we want it to be an official, can it still be an official VIM trip?
Yes. Yes.
Even though we're not open, it's not an open trip
Right.
to
Yeah.
the conference?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Just and it is. I mean, it's official. If it's sponsored by your church, it's an official trip. That's where I said sometimes we think that there's some big hoops to jump through. The only thing that I normally ask to post it is that the leaders trained. I don't want to put out teams that are going that I don't know they know best practices.
Right.
So, you know, I take this person from out where they don't have anybody in their church who wants to go to mission, and I send them on with a team with an untrained leader, and they have a bad experience, and I don't want to do that. That's really the only thing I put on over the years, is I want to know that the leader's trained before I share it. But we actually have more teams that aren't shared, that they fill up from congregations. I was happy I got our statistics this summer. We led the Northeast United States in the number of short-term mission offerings.
Is it possible to have both the closed and open teams posted like in two separate things? Just in case you wanted the information, like you said, if let's say you wanted to go to Tarboro, you would have this who to contact here. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to, even if it's just seeing the path or the leader's email that they're leading a team.
That could be a possibility depending on how things in the office come out. A lot of times I get things at the last minute as people need insurance. Nobody in this room, no. Because there's another thing here that we'll talk.
But even if you had
it's fine.
even if it was like past trips that have gone, you know, that's still, that they would have that information that you could still possibly.
I have that all saved. It's probably something communications could put out on a sub-page of this or something.
I would say that I agree because with your idea, because let's say you got a group of people that just went through the training and they want to have an idea and they want to go to Africa, and you see somebody's already gone, you can contact them and get some information about what their experience was. So it does create an
Or
opportunity.
like if Camp Hill, you know, we're going somewhere and they're doing like this multi-phase project and they're step one, well maybe, you know, I don't know, First Williamsport has the ability to go the following week and stuff like that, and they're looking, you know, you could sit there and coordinate that as one's going out, one's coming in.
I think it's a possibility.
That's pretty
Certainly.
awesome.
Here's another thing that we're going to talk more about insurance, but when you all need to find your insurance roster, it's downloaded here.
How do we get our stuff out here? Like,
Pardon?
How do we get our trips out here to say, here, we have a trip going?
My best guess going forward is you would send it to that VIM email.
Okay.
For the last 5 years, people just called me or emailed me and I put it on.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what mechanism's going to be there.
Then obviously you cannot leave because nobody knows what's going on.
I don't want to.
To be fair, couldn't they ask you for as long as it's in the next 12 days that they're taking?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For the next, till the 15th.
You could have it put in your district newsletter and such too.
Sure. And
That's a good idea.
and the other thing is you can post it on the VIM Facebook page.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Get it out there.
This trip that's listed for Rev in October, I know she's taken all the DSs and the bishop down. Is that the same trip or is that a different trip?
I don't know. She hasn't told me. She just gave me the. So I didn't even know the DSs were going. That's interesting. Huh? I didn't know that.
I'm getting my letters together.
Let me find where.
Yeah, sorry, district superintendents and the bishop, so you understand.
That's great. I didn't know that.
Sounds like a double-edged sword for a pastor. Could either go really well for you or really poorly.
I'm not saying nothing. Just this once, I'm gonna be smart enough to keep my mouth shut.
One job you don't ever want to be a pastor.
That's not true. The DSs will tell you it's the DS, and the bishop will say it's the bishop.
I know, right?
Another place I had said about is the Northeast jurisdiction. So the Northeastern United States made up of, I think it's 10 United Methodist conferences. There's also a webpage there. And they list teams as well. So if you're looking for other
Look at that. Oh, I got a lot.
opportunities, They do abound.
Wow. Did you use forms?
Yeah, what was that?
Oh, sorry.
Northeast.
Yeah.
Everything.
vimnej.org. vimnej.org. All right. But also on here, you can look and there are other resources you may want to look at as a team leader. They're also pretty good at updating things if there are health or travel advisories that sometimes they get before we even get them at my office. So it's part of your toolkit, so to speak. All right. Okay. Church building. There you go. There's Sierra Leone.
Absolutely. Where did you go when you went there?
All around.
Did you?
But our partner church was in Gendema, which is right on the Liberian border.
Okay.
It was out there a ways.
Mhm.
But I was part of a group that we went to several. I don't know if we went to Camp Hill's partner or not.
With Jeff Fisher? No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't go to our party.
Okay.
Nowhere close.
All right.
Mhm.
You know, Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've chosen our leader, we've chosen our project, and we're starting to get ready to put the news out there. It's taken a long time, hasn't it? Team leaders, what do you need to be ready to answer? What are people going to ask you when you say, "Hey, come with me"?
How much does it cost? How long will it be that we will be there? Where will we be staying? What will we be doing?
Is it safe?
Is it safe?
Do I have to get shots?
Yes. That's one of the big ones. I have to get done.
Medications,
Do I need my passport?
Yes.
facilities.
You guys rattled them off pretty good.
Do I
Will there
need to
be
take
cell
toilet
phone
paper?
Will there be
Yes.
what?
Cell phone service.
Do I,
Yeah, delivery service, do toilet paper. A lot of these things, and again, this is where your pre-work with your site host is important, or your ministry partner. And I keep saying ministry partner. That is very important attitude for our team leaders, because that filters down to our team members. They are our boss, as I've said. We are servants. And we need to explore those questions before we go, and we have to buy in. You can't say, "I'm going to go there, but I want to take 12-year-olds," when they say 14's the limit. If you aren't comfortable and it doesn't meet what you're trying to do, it's okay to say, "I'm going to go someplace else." That doesn't make them bad, it doesn't make you bad. But you need to buy in. And I always encourage you to get those things in writing. Certain things of communications, I love the developments, other things not so much. I was talking about the break. I used to love when we could go on mission, and I landed in the airport and called my wife and said, "I'm safe, I'll talk to you in 10 days. And not about not communicating with her, but that isolation in service in the team was wonderful. Now you get off the middle of India and it says, "Welcome to the network," and that's not so good. I don't like it. But one of the things, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you said about going by yourself and stuff, and I think that's a great idea, but I also want to try to do something like it's family orientated.
Mm-hmm.
That way I don't feel like I'm leaving my wife and kids at home, but how, have you done that, and how is that like, what's that like?
I have done it. I've done it with my wife and children. I've done it many times, my wife and I. I think it's a great shared experience. I mean, honestly, my wife and I many times just sit back and go, "Wow, we've shared," after 30 some years of marriage, some of the most memorable things we shared are the mission experiences we've been on. And so I encourage you to find the one that's right, whether it's construction, whether it's Bible school, whether it's just going and befriending and getting to know people. They're out there. And there probably, for some of them, there are going to be limits. I mean, I waited till our children were 14 till I took them, but that was kind of dictated by the kind of trips I did.
Right.
If I'd have been going to the Russian orphanages at that time, I could have taken my kids younger, and the kids there would have loved to play with them. I did 2 Russian orphanage trips, one in the summer, one in the winter. The one in the summer, we worked in the orphanage half the day. The other half of the day, we played with the kids. The winter trip, we went and we took little gift bags. We took Christmas to the orphans. And we left them put on their Christmas pageant for us. You know, no special skills necessarily involved. The kids would have loved that. So there are those opportunities. I think it's helped, not that I had a bad marriage, but I think it helped our marriage and our walking faith together. So absolutely.
Sorry, I've been wanting to ask that, and you were saying about leaving your family for 10 days, and I thought it might have been.
Well,
I mean,
there's
it's not-
times she's glad when I do that, but
I love going to hunting.
Not
camp,
me.
and I don't mind taking the boy with me, and that gives her a break and us a break, and it just seems to work.
But I did one where I took it was just our daughter. She was very academically oriented. She never wanted to miss school to go on a trip. So when she graduated from high school, one of the last, before she went off to college, she and I went to the Czech Republic for 2 weeks.
That's
And
awesome.
so yeah, it's good stuff. I started saying about the getting in writing. One of the things that I do, so much is done by email now. I create a little folder for that trip. Every communication I have goes in that folder until I'm back and have reported everything back to my team. That way, one of the things that happens in a lot of our ministries and charities is changing staff, turnover. If you have it there, you have the communication, it's just an easy way to keep things together. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage, when you try to put it together, don't try and put it together in 60 days. People need time to plan, and even if it's just down to New Jersey, your first time out, give yourself a year to plan, to recruit, to get trained, to go experience. Maybe in the meantime, you go with somebody else if you haven't gone on one. Don't rush it. If you're going out of the country, again, make sure you're 100% comfortable with the ministry partner you're working with, because you're going to depend on them for a lot. Whether it's transportation or safety issues or food issues, don't be afraid to ask the questions. I looked at some other countries that I had some great ministry partners lined up, but we would have had to actually go in person to their embassy to get a visa. I can't get 10, it's hard enough to get 12 people for a team meeting, let alone we're all going to DC to get visa appointments, unfortunately. But I knew, I did the research before I announced the team, so I didn't have a whole bunch of people all hyped up to go and then say, oh, yeah, well, no, we're not going to do that. Make sure your folks know that, as a general rule of thumb, they should have at least 6 months left on their passport after you return. And it's not a bad idea for you to double check that when you sign people up. I did have one it was part of my meeting. 2 months out from departure, they said, oh, I noticed my passport actually does expire before then. I had already got the visa, and the visa is based on the passport number. So it all worked out, but again, just hassles. Vaccinations, one of the things I caution you, again, do your research, but don't try and be a medical professional. People will say, do I need that shot? talk to your medical professional. Many times these days, most are going to get referred to a travel clinic if it's out of the country. That can be pricey. I think when I went to Sierra Leone, I don't know, I think it was like, I had like $400 in shots, and I had already had some stuff done. So, something to think about, but again, I always just refer them back to their primary care provider for detailed information.
And to find out what, some of my shots were covered on my regular benefits. So you have that conversation. Some people's work will cover their shots and their medications. So that was very helpful for me in cost.
That's a good point.
I think the conference insurance covered mine for.
Yeah, and depends on, sometimes it depends on your relationship with your provider. There's certain things that they can, with certain insurances, if they submit it a certain way. So it's kind of fluid.
Yeah.
I know my provider is a Christian man who has been in mission, so he looks for ways to get it covered for me. But I hear other folks are like, I called, they just said go to the travel clinic, we won't even see you.
Oh, wow.
Customer friendly. Travel agents. Those of you who've gone, do you use travel agent or not?
We do.
Yes and no?
It just helps a lot.
First time out of the box, not a bad idea, especially. Not necessarily. You'll get better rates online, Expedia, whatever, but typically you can only do like 5 to 7 people at a shot. And then from time to time, when you go for the second 5, that price may change, or, heaven forbid, it could fill. So these are things. Now, one of the things that's been nice is that most of the sites now are giving you 24-hour cancellation if you're using it online, where a while back they didn't. So once you booked it, you were stuck with it unless you paid a big fee. Now with the 24-hour cancellation, there's a little more comfort there that you don't have to worry if I only get 12 of my 18 on that flight, I can still cancel. Just watch, be very diligent. My son, who I said about Bloomsburg, I told him he was leading that team. I was going to be the old man along, but that he needed, but he was leading it. So he booked them online. I think 4 of his team members coming back actually he clicked the wrong connecting flight. They came back, but they had to spend an extra hour in, I think it was Atlanta. It was 1 digit off. So just every little number. But some of the ones that I have used, educational opportunities, mission travel. One of the things that I've had some success with is I'll shop online, and then I'll say, hey, this is what I'm seeing online. And oftentimes they can get real close when if I just go in, they come out with a price, but oftentimes when I say, can you get close to this, the pencil gets a little sharper. And it is nice, because then you know you have that block of tickets, everybody's on the flight, and if they aren't, it's somebody else has to straighten it out, not you. I've heard people get rate breaks. I've never gotten them. It used to be when you had a large group, you got a group rate that was less. Anymore, I'm seeing the rates are higher for groups. Maybe it's just my sunny personality. I don't know, but it's worth a try. You never know. I have had folks, again, I had a team to the Bahamas. We got canceled because of a hurricane. I had non-refundable tickets. And I took me an hour and 3 transfers, but I did finally the airline did transfer them to a later date for no fee. So it does, don't give up, keep asking.
Well, Jill said for her Africa trip, she has her tickets on hold. How do you
The travel, the EO, I think I gave her EO, educational opportunities. They are, and other agents are able to hold a block with a deposit of however many you tell them. And then usually, then there's a cutoff date that you're committed, and they need the rest of the money, and you're committed to fill whatever you let on there. But the travel agent will tell you exactly what those are.
So we had our first year where we had to change our tickets. What an experience, right, Drew?
Yeah.
And it's so important to be mindful to stay connected the whole year process of developing and planning the trip. That you're aware of whatever is going on within the place in which you're going to visit. Because life shows up. And I mean, when you least expect it, i.e. election times when people want to go smashing up and tearing up the village that you're scheduled to go visit in 2 months. You don't want to find that out 2 months in. But it's really important to have that communication of what's going on, where you're going, and is everything okay, and things like that, because life will show up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had some teams trapped in Haiti a couple weeks ago.
Holy
They couldn't, because of what was going on in the streets, and the airports got closed down. As far as I know, everybody got home eventually safe and sound, but yeah, those ongoing communications. And some of the places we serve, it can be challenging. However, if you're using an established ministry, they're used to that. They look out for you.
That's the nice thing about Jitty. Like, we book our airline tickets, but the rest of everything's taken care of by them.
Right. Right. Another question that they're going to ask you, having to do with money, is: are we going to do fundraising? Team leaders, it's up to you. I don't do fundraising. I don't mean that my teams won't do fundraising. My approach, I'm taking care of everything else. If you want to do fundraising, I will help like any of the other team members. But I'm not organizing that on top of it. But that will be a question that's asked. And my apologies. Sorry. They're going to ask. So these are some of the things that I've seen. What have you all done or experienced?
We do sponsorship letters. First we do a presentation, so people already know. But then we have our individual letters that we speak about our journey, and we give them to certain people within the church that you know support your journey.
Absolutely.
So that's a great.
Absolutely.
And then the digital version of GoFundMe accounts, and people basically taking it on their own accord to send it out to their contact list and get support for the trip.
I think there are a number of benefits if you're doing it, especially if you're a new group. You start to get the feel of doing stuff together. As a team leader, you get to see a little bit of a dynamic in a works environment. You can see, you're not going to see everything, but you get to start to get some insight into your team. The other thing that I'm a big one on is your church. Your church's team, even if they aren't going, it's their team. And you got to find ways to make them part of it. And if that's having a dinner, if that's, putting a bunch of pink flamingos in somebody's yard, or I don't know. Talent shows, yeah. And don't be ashamed of this. You're out doing God's work. I think, you knew I have background in development and fundraising, so I guess it's part of ingrained in my head, but we should not be ashamed of asking for support to do ministry.
I remember the gentleman who runs the ministry, the Children to Love International that we work with, who I'm not a go ask people for money kind of thing, and I was very hesitant about that, and he said, Joanne, if you don't do that, you're depriving people of the opportunity to do God's work. right?
Absolutely.
That money might be the only thing that they're able to do, right? They may not have the health to go with you to India, but if you don't give them that opportunity, they can't do God's work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right now, Kurt, you know, I'll send these along if they can look at them, but I do want them back, please. Especially so Kurt doesn't get one unless he buys one, but these are going like hotcakes right now for our mission team. And they're a discount card. I don't know if anyone does discount cards in your areas, but all we do is sell the card. Then for a year, they get those discounts.
Oh, wow.
Just for-
And basically, all you have to do is ask a person. Most people are like, yeah, I want one of those. And people call us up even and say, hey, I heard you're selling these. We need so many, you know?
How did you get the sponsors?
I went around and asked the
Yeah.
people, the businesses to sponsor them.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Now, a lot of them in our area usually just do it for restaurants, like our school does the cards also. But I wanted to have more of a variety because there's, some people just don't eat out.
Right.
This is great.
Wow, this is very cool.
I mean, once you pay for the printing, and which for 1,000 of them, it was less than $300 to be printed. It's all profit then.
Wow, that's awesome. Great idea.
There you go.
Wow, that is a great idea.
Yeah, make sure you slip one on down there.
Yeah, I'm watching it.
She said she got
But I always want to give an amen to Joanne. It is awesome to give people the opportunity to be part of your mission. We've been given so much. And we have an opportunity to share in the name of Christ. And people can support, and I still am a strong believer, if we tell the story of the ministry and what the impact is, our people are generous people. God's people are generous people. They'll give. All right. Team leaders, what makes a good recruiter? Passion. Persistence.
Able to do personal invitation.
Personal invitation.
So that's like awareness, consciousness of your surrounding.
Okay. Aware of the opportunities to invite.
Right.
Relationship.
What relationships do you have? Which relationships don't you have? Could you cultivate?
Knowledgeable about where you're
Excitement.
going.
I think, and one of the things, and I don't even have it on the list, I don't believe. Let's look down through here. Oop. Is looking for opportunities to get into or invite groups that you're not a part of in your church. I mean, let's think about, even in small churches, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, whether it's generational differences, different Sunday school classes, different subgroups of activities that we're not a part of. One of the things that I've been blessed so richly over the years is the generational differences. And I didn't always consciously think about, there was XYZ Sunday school class that was kind of this age group. And then even in adulthood. And then there was this Sunday school class that was kind of this age group. And sometimes we don't think about making that connection, that invite, across generational lines. And it can be one of the biggest blessings to your team, is to see teenagers working alongside people that are 60 years older than them, that they would never talk to on a Sunday morning because they just, not that they don't like each other, they just don't interact. You need to know your project, know the story. Again, the newsletters, bulletins, yeah, you need to have it there. But my experience has been minimal results. I think it's as good as, the biggest reason I want it there is I want people in the church to know what's happening. so that when I come to them for money, they don't know, what are you talking about? Here's another thing. Nobody said, how about outside of our church? Mission can be a tool to expand our churches. There's a lot of people who their idea of church is that Sunday morning, 1 hour with, maybe I've got a great pastor with a great message, or maybe I don't, but that's church. But you ask them, they've got a good heart, maybe they can experience church in a new way. Maybe for the first time in their life, they'll see faith in action through your mission team. I've heard a lot of stories of folks who have reconnected with or connected for the first time with the church because they started, I want to go help somebody. And during that week, they saw Christians living their faith instead of just hearing a sermon. They saw a sermon. Think about it. Again, there's a lot of folks who push on publicity of different sorts. I do encourage you to tell your story everywhere. It can be part of recruitment, but it's also good for your church and its relationship with your community. If they know that you're doing something besides Sunday morning worship. Newspapers, newsletters, district newsletters, web pages. Send it to the VIM address. Again, be open. It doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, I've gotten a chance to do radio spots or interviews about what we're doing or why. Even I did one a couple years ago. They were looking for filler. They wanted to talk about vacation and mission, and using traveling the world as taking vacation time and allotting it to change the world. Be open. You don't know what's going to be out there. Again, I want to involve my local church. The more they feel this is their team, the more you're going to get in finances, in membership, and so on. Some of the big ones, prayer calendar. We should be bathing all of our experiences, again, whether it's down the street or across the world. Have people in prayer for us and over us. Some people talk about having just a general member on their, come to their committees, meetings and orientations, even if they're not going on the team. I've never done it. Usually the only people who want to come to my meetings are the ones that are going to go. But if it's another way to communicate things within the church body, sure. Here's another big one for me, maybe not for you. This isn't about, hey, look at me, I'm going someplace. This is about asking the congregation to pray over our team, and God to bless our work, and keep us as a team in prayer. Again, prayer calendar, but also this commissioning service, I think, is another way of us to get and show that we can be in ministry, not just our pastors. I also know there are some pastors I've heard who've declined to do this. I hope that isn't the case. If you do, find a Sunday school class, pray over you before you go. Something like that. I was dumbfounded when I heard that. But find someone. As you go along, you're going to have certain ways you want things done. Train your team. Spend the time with your team. I really advocate you requiring team members to come to team orientations and meetings. There are a number of ways to do that these days, that even if you have people physically far away, whether it's Skype or FaceTime or something like that, you're going to save yourself headaches. People are still going to say, I didn't hear you say that. I mean, it's just gonna happen, let's be honest, but it minimizes it. Or you have other people on your team who did hear it, they back you up before you ever have to deal with an issue. You know, Kurt said we shouldn't be doing that. It's the truth. You're taking the responsibility, and it is a responsibility. So there's certain things you get to do your way. It is yours. You need to decide what you expect and make that up front. Don't change that. It's okay to say, hey, if you can't commit to this, maybe next year's a better time. One of the questions that I always get asked is, are you getting us to the airport? Again, this is your chance to decide what you're doing. I don't. Because I tried it once or twice, and it just became a nightmare. Well, I don't get off to work till 5. Now, I don't want to travel after 5. I want to be down there. And I was like, okay, second year, here's your plane. Well, I don't give them my plane tickets. Here's when our flight leaves from this airport. Be there at this time at the desk. Now, sometimes I will research. I often research things like park and flies, because so often it's cheaper if you go down the night before and a lot less stress, and get a park and fly room, then you don't pay for the parking. So what you save in parking almost covers your hotel room. I'll provide them with information like that, but I don't book it for them. That's me.
Now, is that because these people come from different areas that go with you?
Sometimes,
Particularly?
it has been the last 5 years, but even for my own church, I'd have the retired couple that could leave whenever they wanted to leave, and their preference was to not drive into Newark at 5 o'clock. I can't fault them for that. You know, so they wanted to leave at noon, but somebody else was using their vacation time, so they didn't want to take a whole nother day of vacation time off. They were going to go down, and that's where it just got too. It wasn't worth it to me. I provide the information, and sometimes a group of them get together, and they're like, "Hey, we'll carpool." Again, I leave it to them, unless like a national, like when we go to Tarboro, I took 2 teams down there. Then we had pickup points. We came with the vans, and we'll pick up at this time, at this point, and go. But
I mean, then there's that. This is another opportunity for individuals that wish they could go with you but can't. Those are called volunteers. Who'd like to take the van and take the team to the airport? Oh, you do. Thank you. Everybody meet at the church at 6 o'clock and we're out. I can't imagine sitting at the airport waiting for you to get here and you late. Listen, that can't happen. Team leader is stressed already. No.
absolutely, and you build.
No survey.
And along those lines of stress management, I do encourage you. See, my wife's the kind of person who's like, we need to be there at this time. I'm the kind of person I need to be there at this time, so I'm going to be there at this time. So that when the lady's checking in and the ticketing agent drops her passport behind the ticketing computer, behind the counter, and they have to call maintenance to disassemble it to get her passport out, I'm cool as a cucumber. We still got time. I kid you not. I was sitting there, you what? It's down there. We'll get it. They can.
Oh my gosh.
Be kind to yourself.
Please.
You're going to wait anyhow. Wait stress-free.
Amen.
You know, I only ever had, I started to leave without one. And it was a pastor. That just happened to be the fact. She got there early. She just checked down in without us. I was going nuts. I was calling, I was rolling her voicemail. Oh, I said, well, we're leaving. We got to the gate. She's like, hi, guys. I'm like, where have you been? Anyhow, build the time in. How will you do devotions? Devotions should be a part of your day, every day.
Wake up and go.
So I'm a devotions in the morning kind of person. I like to get up, gather the team before breakfast, maybe have a cup of coffee if you're so inclined, and spend a few moments in the Word
Okay.
and center us. Some people like to do it in the evening. Some like to do it both times. You decide, your team. I draw on my team to do devotions. I assign devotions, dates. I have a little folder that I usually put like songbooks in, like song sheets. And on the inside, I tape on the date and who has devotions. I never see it again after the first day. I hand it to the person. When they're done with devotions, they pass it to the next person. And I also use that as a tool. Now, you be careful, because if you have first timers that might not be comfortable, that prayer anxiety.
He's been here 7 times.
You're going to ask me to pray in public. I use that as a tool to mix up my new folks with my experienced folks. So if my team's large enough, I do it in twos. Make some conscious choice there. That's the way I do it. Some people have one person who does the theme for the week, and they do devotions all week. Perfectly fine. Your choice. Oh. But be prepared to tell people. Will you have your age limits? What's your policy on that? Will you have things delegated within? I have good team leaders who delegate the finances. They big picture people get it together, but they have somebody else who handles all the bills and receipting and so on. I personally, I feel like I'm always accountable for that, so I don't hand that off. I'll hand off things like photography. You may want to have somebody on the team who's taking photos, movies, whatever. That's a good thing to do. Again, your devotions, you might just say, hey, I'm recruiting you, take care of devotions.
This past year, we added blogging.
Okay.
So we take turns of giving a little piece of our experience, and that person, we have a team phone, and we post it on Facebook so our families and our church could know how we're doing and be excited and continue to pray. So that's pretty
cool.
exciting.
Joanne, I didn't ask the lunch plan.
So we have a hoagie. We have a couple of hoagies
Okay.
that are made, so whenever
Okay.
we're ready for lunch, we'll just pop it out and we're
Cool.
good to go.
Okay, thank you. As I spoke to earlier, decide whether you're going to require attendance. I think you should. You will have to make decisions. And it seems overly simplified, but be prepared and don't, do it prayerfully, but don't apologize. You're taking something on, and you're taking a responsibility, and you're not going to please, well, you can still please people, but you aren't going to do it the same way everybody else would do it. But you know what? They didn't take on the job. You did. So when I get my team together, I'm starting to break it up. A lot of times I'm bringing people together that are new in my situation. In your church, you may be old friends. Our first groups were people we knew from Sunday school. We knew them somewhat. But we're starting to do this whole team thing. Often I'll ask folks, why are you going? You get some interesting answers. Somebody made me. Spiritual formation. Talking about the objectives. Again, this is my time to start that process of what we're doing. The job that we're doing is not the focus of our time together, is not the focus of this trip. It's a means for us to share the love of Christ. That's what we're about. If we don't get anything else done, we don't come home without sharing love with somebody in the name of Christ. So, whatever your style of communicating and starting that process, that's what you want to do. We're getting through to them that we're servants. We're changing that whole dynamic sometimes of what we're used to in everyday life, where it's about what's best for me, what's best for my family. No, now it's what's best for the kingdom, what's best for the team, and I might want to do it that way, but it's not about me.
Selflessness.
Preach it.
Kurt, do you actually do this retreat or this day apart training, or do you really do a couple evening trainings?
I usually
before?
do a couple evenings, afternoons.
Okay.
Sunday afternoons have been working fairly good for me. I mean, again, if we're following this 1 year timeline, set those things out 4, 5, 6 months from the very beginning. This is when we're getting together. Even if you add people along the way, that way people can plan. There's not the excuse of I didn't know.
So
'Cause
how
I-
early do you lock in the team?
It depends on where I'm going in my
How
ministry
late would
partner.
you add someone? Like, why would you do an orientation 6 months before if you're still going to add
Well-
someone at month three months before?
Part of what we'll talk about is I'll start doing paperwork. But sometimes we've had things where we're getting together, not necessarily finalizing the team, but getting to know each other. So maybe it's a fundraiser, or we're talking about what event's going to come up. I like to get things out so that I don't have that excuse fed back to me. I didn't know about it. If I don't need the meeting, I can cancel it. That's a lot easier than getting it on.
And it's easier to get a small number of people caught up, like if you have to have a fill-in or something
Right.
3 weeks before you leave, it's easier to fill in one person
Right.
than it is to have to.
And I think the dynamic changes too based on what kind of mission you're doing. If I'm doing a local mission or I'm going to Tarboro, I don't need to see you until 2 weeks before we go. I mean, it's at the stage where I'm at, get the paperwork's less, you don't have to worry about tickets and so on. I'm going to Kenya, I want it locked in 4 months out. That's usually when I'm just like, I'm done.
Team, lodging, transportation, the
Yep.
whole deal. 4 months, okay.
That's, again, what I find is interesting is I often max out people for the distant, expensive trips faster than I do the local ones. For all the fuss we get, I hear of let's do something close to home, I could do it. I have more problems getting people there, which actually works, in a way it works better. I can add and subtract real easy to go to North Carolina. To go to India, not so much. The other thing that I would do, like when I did my Kenya team, we had a meeting quite a long, that was probably 6 months out. I brought some missionaries in who had served in Kenya. And we started doing culture. Tell us about it. Teach us some phrases in Swahili and whatever. So starting that process, again, if you're going something totally different, totally new, spend the time to respect what their culture and start educating yourself. Show pictures when you can. The other thing I'm doing, again, my system, take it, leave it. Orientation. I'm doing all my paperwork there. I am not, I've given up on this, send me the paper, I'll send it back to you. I'm not doing that anymore.
Them days.
You bring your passport with you and come, and I'm not letting you out the door until every form is signed and returned to me. You don't have to do it that way. But I guarantee you, if you don't, you're going to be chasing. And that's, again, it's just my thing. It works well. I'll be set up. I'll take visa photos, everything, process in one day.
You take your own visa photos.
Yeah. There's an app for it.
How about that?
That's getting on the list.
You didn't say passport, visa.
But that's like, that slows people down. Just getting that stinking photo at CVS or Rite Aid just
Absolutely.
slows down the visa process for
Yeah,
weeks.
and it depends on what you're doing.
So if you
I
get
mean,
those
like,
photos, that's
Kenya,
one thing.
I
You
can
have
submit
everything
everything
on the front, but you
electronically,
still need this
so-
stupid 2-inch by 2-inch photo.
Digital, but yeah, there's an app that it's worked for Kenya.
No way.
But I get all of that, yeah, and that's also,
No.
you're gonna need to decide if you are going out of the country and you need visas, are you gonna process them or are you gonna have them process? There's certain countries you go to, it's almost impossible for the team leader to process. Other ones, it's very easy. I mean, Kenya, I could get basic information, I took a photo and I could do it all digitally and it was easy.
Sierra Leone's pretty easy.
Okay. But also at that meeting, I'll start to talk about, we're all, hopefully have some idea of what we're gonna be doing. So I'll be talking about things like, how much luggage are they allotted? That's changing a little bit these days. I mean, we used to have 2 bags on international, and I would usually give my team member 1 bag for themselves, and the rest was for the team.
Amen.
But be prepared for those things. Also preparing a list of what, if anything, you're going to take or gather donation-wise.
Or you're allowed to take.
Right. Yeah, and do some research. Again, talking with your hosts. I got stopped in Peru over vitamins. I didn't think I was getting out. They said, I had a suitcase of vitamins for kids, and I got pulled. Thankfully, I had a shirt with a cross on, and they took me to somebody, and he said, "Missionario?" I was like, "See?" He hit the switch, and the green light came on, and I got out of there. But do your research. I got stopped in Kenya with shoes. Because are you bringing things in to sell?
Right.
So what I typically do with things like that, I had, in each suitcase that had stuff for our ministry partner, I had a letter from the local person ministry we're dealing with, describing what it's for and how to contact them in country. And then as a team leader, I also carry that. And it has worked. I got stopped in customs at Kenya. And he's like, "What's in the bags?" And I said, "Gifts." For who? I said, "For the children at an orphanage." Pulled out the letter. He read it. He never opened a bag. He's just like, "Go." So get together what you're going to take, if you're going to take anything. It's not always appropriate to take stuff. So think about it, and again, that communication with your host, what we think they need may not be what they need. If I go carrying 50 pounds of school books to Kenya on chemistry,
Duh.
I just lug books halfway across the world for exercise because they're not going to get used. Listen to your host. I also have some teams that sometimes they're going to do specialized service. They'll have an orientation and they'll bring somebody in to teach them the new skills. So maybe you're going to go do drywall and you've never done drywall, but you have a contractor at your church who says, "Hey, I'll teach you. Maybe they can't even go, but maybe they can teach you." And again, it's another way to get the church involved in the team without even going on the trip. It's also my time to pound, and I am serious. Again, most of my stuff I do out of the country, but it's not just out of the country. Safety, safety, safety. What are your expectations of that team? I do not let anyone leave our ministry areas without talking to me first, and they depends on where we're at on whether I'll let them go alone or not. Usually not. But some of the places we've been in Costa Rica where the church community there all knows us, it's cool, it's safe, for them to walk down to the corner and get a Diet Coke. India, don't do it. I know I got some India people. Don't do it. Great country, but we stand out like, I don't even know what a good comparison would be. And we're money. If you're in a rural, poor area, America means money. And it does.
I can tell you, that's so hard, right? As an independent American woman, I chafe at the bit, and my partner, my team members know I really had a hard time with that. And whenever we debrief, I'd always debrief that, because that is just so hard for me.
Which part?
It is what it is.
Which?
The not being able to go out and just do what I want to do, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I'm an
remember
independent
one
American
question.
woman.
I mean,
In
that,
the morning, can I go for a walk? And John goes, absolutely not.
I was like, what?
yeah, no.
Oh, so
What?
you're one of those.
What? I can't go for a walk?
Do you want
myself
to
in the
know
morning?
team leader panic? Be at the Taj Mahal, and your independent lady who says you worry too much is gone.
Oh, no, yeah, see, I wouldn't do that.
How many thousands of people are in there at a time? Where's Claudia? I don't know.
Oh, geez.
Again, it gives me chills. And at the end, Claudia was great. She was a great lady, brought some really special things to our team, but she was so independent. And she would just disappear. And I'd call her on it. Other team members called her on it. We got through. And on her evaluation, she said, I had a great time, but you worry too much. I'm an adult, and I'm like, I can live with that criticism, because I brought you back safe.
That's right.
Family will appreciate it.
Yes.
These
But-
are my rules, I'm the leader, you gotta. follow.
Absolutely. And there's times you have to do that.
Yeah.
But again, when you brief it and you know people, you up front, you tell them, and usually people understand if you explain it. And that's where the orientation time is. I'm talking about your safety, and here's why. I mean, India, Sierra Leone, these are, it can be done safely, it can be done well, but you have to be smart, and you have to listen to your hosts. That's what I usually look to our hosts, no matter where I am. Is it safe for us to go?
One of the things that I saw is that as a leader, you also have to follow your own rules.
That's right.
Because I was on a team, and there was co-leaders, but one of the leaders was like, I'm a leader, I am gonna go do this thing, and went off by themselves or whatever, broke the rules that no one's allowed to go off by themselves, and the rest of the team's just sitting there going,
Absolutely. It's, yeah. Practice what you preach, no doubt. But again, whether it's in this country or another, there's
I don't
concerns.
really chime in with my experience, but the one trip I was on at Curdy probably 10, 12 years ago, we had a kid, he was probably 12 at the time. He fell asleep in a supply closet during, like, it was the end of the day, we were all like around the school campus doing projects, and he fell asleep, and then because we had been all briefed together on safety, we all broke out to find him. So we're thinking he left or something, or here he was just asleep, like in the supply closet. It was fine, but because we all knew like we had each other's back, and it wasn't the first time we talked about where is everybody,
Right.
keeping everybody accountable. We were like, all right, it was a terrible hour if we were trying to find him, but
Yeah.
it worked out.
It's not a good feeling. It's not a feeling I wish on any of you as leads teams, is when someone comes up and you're like, where do you go? If you don't, and then if many cases, if you're out of the country, you don't speak the language, so you don't even know how to ask for help. I mean, we lost 2 in the Kremlin too. I wasn't the team leader, actually. That
I
was
don't know if I'm bull with you, Kurt.
no, I wasn't. I actually I went to the team leader and said, you're missing 2. And he's like, huh? And we found him. But yeah, personal funds will be a question. People will always want to know, how much money should I take? How much money do I need? Talk about, again, back to talk with your hosts. Also think about your plan. People will want to know if you're doing something cultural, so to speak, an outing, is that included? If not, be prepared. I personally don't do that. I shouldn't say that. There's certain things I will do, but I minimize team funds because of the critics we have back home who say you're going on vacation. So I don't pay for it out of the team, but I'll let people know. A lot of times we'll have in-country transportation. I'll pay for transportation. I'm paying for it anyhow. So, maybe I'll pick it up an extra day, like Kenya. I had the vans come a day early for us before we left, and we went through the safari, or through a game preserve, but all the individuals paid it. Again, people will ask the question, and I encourage those kinds of experiences because we get to know the people, and whether it's the coal mines of West Virginia, a coal mine tour of where they're coming from, or it's Kenya Game Preserve, it helps us understand the people more, where they're coming from, where they're living, what they're living with.
Could you explain to the church, like, that even, I mean, I wouldn't say you go nuts with it, but like even saying, we're gonna go out for dinner one night and we're gonna do an exploration of this museum or something like that, because that just helps us learn and get a more full experience of these people that we're serving.
It can. I mean, again, this is you determining what you want to do and what battles per se you might face. Now at the church we're attending, or had been attending, they had come along in mission to understanding at Grace that I was no longer worried about $10 per person to go into the hot springs, the natural. That wasn't a big deal. Early on, that was a big deal. Because we had educated, and now such a large portion of that church has experienced the mission, it's not. But I'm just saying, make up your mind before your orientation. Have your numbers ready if you're going to have a cost to something.
Well, Kurt, what do you do if, like, someone says they don't want to participate in that activity?
Is that absolutely fine?
They can stay back somewhere?
It depends on where we're at. They can either stay back or they can come along and, depending, like the hot springs, they have an area outside that you don't have to go into they can sit in the restaurant and wait. Play it by ears for your surroundings. What's safe?
Ask the people, say,
Can I pick your brain about another angle on the personal fun thing?
Sure.
So we recognize that our trip is a long-term perspective and not a short-term mission perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We receive a lot of requests for personal help. So a lot of team members will get requests for personal help. So the number of personal funds continues to increase with every trip, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say on one hand, it's a great benefit to like the personal stories that are being developed that God is writing. And on the other hand, compared to our overall goal, it almost seems in competition with and distraction from sometimes the overall goal.
And I think I know where you're going.
Just love to hear your point.
Well, with personal funds, again, I'm pretty much a stickler on. We do not. It's a slightly different relationship than what you all are developing. But when we go out into ministry areas, we do not distribute personal funds directly to individuals. Doesn't happen.
Ground rule policy.
Does not happen.
Short-term VIM.
Yep. I've been educated by enough missionaries about the damage that it can do, because we can start to develop this person. We don't know. We know what we're told by that individual or that family, but we don't know the whole picture.
Right.
And so we see somebody who looks to be in need. As a Christian, we want to help alleviate suffering and love that person. However, around the corner is a church member who's even in worse shape. Well, we've now potentially caused a rift between those two people because they got help, but they didn't. All of my funds, and I have called people, and I know it's hard. I'm telling you, it's hard. All of my funds go to the ministry. I let local leadership decide how to distribute funds. In my view, that strengthens the local church or a ministry partner and
Right.
takes our ego out of it.
I guess that's how, that's how our team funds are, we budget in
Right.
the fact that we're gonna give some money to help groups and organizations from the team perspective. But when it comes to personal funds, you're saying you still dictate as a team leader
You do.
how people use their personal funds.
I dictate that they
Right.
don't give them to anything other than our ministry partner.
Okay.
Buying stuff, whatever.
Right.
But even that, I've been told about rift in a church over somebody gave somebody a hat, but somebody else wanted it. Well, they were viewed as favored. You don't like me here. They like them better. And the other thing that I've also seen in some situations where people are begging is you can actually put them in danger. I share India. It broke my heart. We were in Delhi. We were going under an underpass and people are homeless laying everywhere. A young lady looked to be like 14. Comes out holding a toddler. Wound on the toddler's arm, pus. And she's just tapping at the window. I wanted nothing more than to give her some money to go get some care or food. Thankfully, people wiser than me had trained me. I looked up and I looked, every eye on the side of the street was on her, waiting to see if I gave her money. And if I gave her money, potentially, I put her in danger. That they would potentially beat her up to get that money. Or put our car in danger because then we would have been just surrounded. It's hard. You go there, you're going someplace to share love, it's hard to see suffering. That has come to me from people in the field as a best practice, not. And so I'm pretty rough on that as far as.
That's how I was talking all of the outer country ones out too. But then the other thing they can do is they can find a way to set up funds through the ministry that you're working with, that if you wanted to donate or give that, then you can even do that from here when you get back, and that pastor or that person that you're still working with can still make sure those needs are met even when you're not there face to face with them.
It's just a little slightly different, I think, with us,
I agree.
because
Us too.
it is the only village that we go to. And we have, over the years, literally put certain kids through school to see them go to high school and college. So we've developed relationships that way. So it's.
But is it, I guess the question could be, is it better to develop a relationship to the ministry or to the individual people,
It's overall, I think it's for the ministry and overall, because it's a thin line there. I mean, we put the schools there, we fund the schools. We allow for our church to sponsor students in the schools. So you're developing a relationship with those individual families.
But if you're putting your money into the school, it's different than going to a kid and saying, here's $50 bill or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
I think we build
Okay.
relationships.
Yeah,
I
that's
have
true.
kids in Romania that, they're like my kids,
Yeah.
and I feel like if I want to send them a birthday present or a Christmas gift, I should be able to do that, and I'm not allowed to do that. That's like frowned upon, because I sent to this child and not to every child in the orphanage. But those are the children that I've connected with. Those are the children I continue to deal with through the year, even though I'm here and they're there. We're reading the same Bible study books, and we talk about, hey, what did you think of today's passage in this book? And it's frowned upon to just, here's a gift for you.
Our natural instinct is to fix it. And it's tough. But the longer I've been in it, the more I've been committed, the more I've seen to strengthening the ministry. And if I have faith in that local leadership and that ministry, then I want to build them up. And otherwise, it can come across as I want to give the glory to God and the ministry, not to me.
Good point.
I think one of the most convincing points for those personal funds helping personal individuals is we come back and share those stories. Those are usually the most motivating stories that we're getting because of the lack of communication with the ministry partners and them recognizing
Sierra
that they
Leone
need
is
to
tough
they
to
need to share their
communicate.
stories from their, as a ministry partner point of view, unless you have someone like on the ground,
Right.
24/7 kind of passing that along. Usually those personal stories are what motivates
Mhm.
the further giving that's gonna go through all the institutions later.
Right. Yeah,
So it's just-
I'm
it's a-
not,
it's
I'm
a
not,
tough-
I'm not
I
trying to
hear
beat you up
points.
in
It's
any way,
tough.
shape, or form. It's hard stuff, and
By
and
also doing it directly, you're also setting yourself up for temptations and egos and stuff like that, and that there is that personal connection, but at what point does it become this is my personal connection with them versus this is me serving God to them?
And there's a guy, go ahead, are you finished?
Yeah.
There was a guy in our church that went to Sierra Leone years ago with Jeff, and he ended up being very close friends with this native person who then asked for his phone number. And he called Brent numerous times, and it ended up they would collect calls, and he was asking for money. And that's what you set yourself up in the future for. It's just,
it's tough stuff.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
is. It is.
It's a
It's not. But again, that's your decision to make. That's where I've come down after years of talking to missionaries. If the things are not in place, then I would work myself. I would be working to see, is it possible to put them in place that it strengthens the ministry so that I still have the stories. No, it's not Kurt funding you through college, but it's Camp Hill United Methodist put you through college, or our ministry partner. So I don't I don't know. It's not an easy thing, and we could go for quite a while.
In Haiti, there was a person there that was in need, and the members of the team that I was on wanted to give that person money. But what our team leader said is we needed to talk to the pastor, and what they ended up doing is they gave the money to the pastor, and then the pastor through that church gave the money for the need that they needed, because the pastor could confirm that the need was there, and so then they were told that that a special donation had been made for them, and the team still got to see that their money went directly to what they needed. It still all happened right then and there, and they still had that story, but that person didn't know that person A on our team was the one that donated $250 or something or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a good approach
Right.
too.
So-
I appreciate the conversation. I know it could go on for a long time, but I
Yeah.
appreciate
No,
the thoughts. Thank you.
And these are they're real things that we need to discuss. And as a team leader, you need to be prepared or be willing to deal with limitations that our ministry partners put on us.
Is it
So-
appropriate to also talk, when talking about personal funds, to set like what souvenirs people can buy? Because I know that some people will try to bring, I don't know, things back like cases of alcohol or something like that that are cheaper out of country than.
Oh.
Well, that's very seldom I get a new one. That's
Yeah.
that's a new one to me.
That
This-
one.
I mean, it certainly is. When I'm taking a team, one of the forms that I have is a mission policy agreement that I have them sign off on, and that includes dealing with alcohol and that kind of stuff. It's not a judgment of you're evil if you like a beer, but as a representative of the church right now in this community, as a team, we're not going to do that simply because for some people, we could damage our witness. And so I think, team leader, you want to say that? Absolutely.
Yeah, because I know that this is for Haiti. There were literally funds raised that people would double the cost of what it would cost to buy a bottle of rum in Haiti, and part of that was being brought back or something like that because it was still cheaper than buying it on U.S. prices and stuff. And technically, some of it had to be smuggled in because customs don't allow it to come through or something like that. And
No, that's a good one. It's a good one.
so,
All right, I see everything's organized over there. Just last on this slide, I also
Cheap after just paid $25.
will distribute at orientation our emergency contacts to be left behind for folks, whether it's through the ministry or whether you've activated for international calling. Just let people know. And then I'll also gather our dietary requirements. Real quick, The forms that I use, that you will find on that, I make everyone complete an application, which gives me background, gives me address. Even if they've gone with me 5 times, I get a fresh one. Things change. Liability waiver is there. Health history. Again, one of our applications, our member applications, has the health history built into it, depending which one you choose to use.
Are these available online too, these?
Yep, these are all online in that forms page. The emergency contact, again, the mission policy agreement, this is another way for you to bring in where your stance is going to be on certain things. And it's another tool. I've never had to use it, thankfully, but if you get into a situation where someone isn't going with the game plan, you can say, listen, you signed off. You didn't say you agreed, but you said you'd abide by the rules. I don't know if it gets to that point, if that paper is going to make any difference or not, but it does give you something. And send an insurance roster, again, which is on that page, a list of your team members to the VIM email account. And, okay. Why don't we, I'll just send this around as part of, you can choose to use or not. One of the things I do anymore, after I get the rosters, I compile them into a spreadsheet so that I can check off what their passport numbers, how much have they paid, it's all on there.